Our guest today is the president of the Chicago Transit Authority. He was appointed by the Chicago Transit Board just over 3 months ago. Prior to this appointment, our guest today served as commissioner of the Chicago Airport System. He earned his bachelor's degrees in sociology and communications from Loyola University Chicago. Our guest, there we go, Loyola, thank you. Our guest today earned his law degree, let's try this one, from Chicago Kent College of Law. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the president of the Chicago Transit Authority, Rich Rodriguez. Rich, there. All right, have some fun up here.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It is afternoon. So first, before I begin, I definitely want to make sure I take a moment to acknowledge some of my staff. And before I do that, Steve and Chairman Riley are both here, and I thank you for being here. I just noticed that they'll be speaking in October, so make sure you get your tickets for their event. It's the RTA. I don't know if Pace or Metro are here as well, but we work together constantly, like siblings at times, so both good and bad. So that's a good thing, Steve. My staff, CTA employees, I'd like to acknowledge, and I know I'm not going to be able to acknowledge all of them, so don't stand, because if a lot of you are here, I don't want everyone to see that you're not working. But my chief of operations, Bill Mooney, the guy's been around for years. This is the man who keeps service going day in and day out, and I appreciate the work that he does. I see Jack Ruby there as well, also part of the operations team. I saw my chief financial officer, Karen Walker, around here someplace. Karen, are you here? Here she is. Karen was appointed the same day that I was, so we've mutually been, we lean on each other often when we have challenges. Other members of my executive team, I have my chief of infrastructure, Chris Bouchel. I'm not sure if he's here or not, but if he is, he deserves a lot of credit. There he is back in the corner. This is the man that is in charge of the Blue Line construction that's going on, the maintenance of our facilities, all the construction work that goes on at the CTA. Chief Development Officer, Evadina Delgado, is she here? She's a creative one in the pack. There she is back there, in charge of marketing, advertising, government and community relations, real estate, you name it. It's all the miscellaneous stuff we don't know who to give to anyone else. Evadina gets. Dorval Carter, Chief Administration Officer for the Chicago Transit Authority. He was in my place while I was transitioning in during Ron's departure, and Dorval's been there for years as well, is an expert at the organization. My Chief of Staff, Peter Owsley, I think should be here as well. There he is over there. And everyone else, so please don't get offended if I've not. Is Teresa Mintle here from the chairman's office? There she is. Teresa Mintle and Mike McLaughlin, our federal affairs person. Credit to them. I thank them for being here. Carol is not here, but trust me, I'd much rather be where she was at right now. It's warm but tropical, unlike what we're experiencing today, warm and humid. So she called me yesterday and apologized. With that said, thank you, Jay Doherty, Paul Green, and the City Club for this opportunity. The last time I spoke to the City Club was in January when I was running the city's Department of Aviation. I shared with you the challenge of moving 200,000 passengers a day through O'Hare Airport. Now, 6 months later, I'm heading up to CTA, and numbers are even more impressive. The CTA provides more than 8 times that number of rides every weekday, 1.7 million rides a day, to be precise. Just to put into perspective, that's the equivalent of more than half the population of the city of Chicago being transported every single weekday. I bring that up because while everyone here understands the need and value of public transportation to a city the size of Chicago, I think that few of us really stop to focus on the sheer volume of service that CTA provides every day. Thank you very much. And all that goes into making it work. Although I'll be the first to acknowledge that there's room for improvement, the reality is that it does, in fact, work. It's certainly something that's been on my mind and on the minds of the entire CTA management team following a terrible train collision in Washington, D.C. on Monday. Our thoughts and prayers are with everyone in Washington who was affected. Although it'll be a long time before the NTSB completes its investigation, our staff here is carefully monitoring all the developments, and I'm sure our colleagues around the country are as well. I want to assure you that the CTA has safety measures in place to try and prevent this type of collision in terms of our systems, procedures, and the design of our vehicles. Our signal system is designed to prevent trains from coming too close together by slowing trains down if there is a train ahead. Track circuits detect the presence of other trains or speed limiting conditions and determine the speed at which the train should be operating. We use an automatic train control system that will take over and stop the train automatically if operators do not brake or slow down when the train signals tell them to do so. There are significant disciplinary penalties if operators attempt to bypass the system without authorization. Our trains are all designed with compatible anti-climbing devices at the front and rear of every rail car to prevent one from riding up onto another if unfortunately a collision does occur. Our rail cars have collision posts within the doors on either end to prevent further penetration by another car. CTA trains are also designed to allow energy to be absorbed at the ends of the car in a collision and then dissipated to reduce the force of the impact. Decades of enhancements to equipment, technology, procedures, and training reflects a proactive safety culture at the CTA, and one in which we continually learn from our own experiences and those of other transit systems. Monday's tragedy is a grave reminder to all of us of the importance of safety at every level of the organization and in all of our decision making. A safety culture depends on all employees, but it begins at the top, and it's a responsibility that I take seriously as the new president of the CTA. With that said, I grew up in Chicago and have been a CTA rider my entire life. But since joining the CTA, I've been looking at it with a fresh perspective and see just how crucial transit is to the health and prosperity of our city and northeastern Illinois. I'm both humbled and honored that Mayor Daley asked me to lead the CTA and help realize his vision of a world-class, prosperous, green, and thriving city. And I very much appreciate the support and guidance of my partner in this effort, Chair of the Chicago Transit Board, Carol Brown. I'd also like to acknowledge our union leaders. Nearly 90% of the CTA workforce is represented by unions, primarily the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU Local 241, represents our bus operators and many of our bus employees, and Local 308 represents our rail employees. I mention them because our employees, their membership, are crucial to the long-term success of the CTA, and we'll be working closely with them on some new customer-focused initiatives that I'll be mentioning in a few minutes. But before I begin speaking about plans for the future, I'd like to give you a quick overview of the CTA. As I said earlier, since joining the CTA, I've been looking at it with a new point of view, and I want to share information that I hope will provide perspective on what it takes to manage, operate, maintain, and improve what's the second largest transit system in the United States, as well as one of the oldest. Then we'll talk about ways in which we want to expand the channels of communication and really become a more customer-focused organization. It's become clear to me very quickly that a great many people are very passionate about the CTA. Something the mayor failed to inform me of before he asked me to come over. I receive letters and emails from many riders who love it and really appreciate the CTA and its employees. But I also have heard from others who, shall I say, are less enamored with the service. The common thread is that there are as many people with ideas and opinions on what works, as well as what doesn't work. I have some thoughts and ways on how to harness that interest to improve our service and engage our riders and the region in charting the future of the CTA. Let's start with the basics. As I mentioned earlier, there are 1.7 million rides on the CTA on an average weekday. That makes the CTA the second largest transit system in the entire country. Only New York City's vast network is larger. The CTA carries a sizable share of the nation's transit ridership. CTA's buses provide 6% of the transit bus rides in the country, and 5% of the nation's heavy rail ridership is on the L. The CTA is also one of the few systems that offers 24-hour service. Here at home, the CTA provides an impressive 80% of all the rides in the northeastern Illinois. That may surprise some of you, but although it is called the Chicago Transit Authority, the CTA's impact and service extends far beyond the Chicago city limits. The CTA serves 40 adjacent suburbs, and of course many people from other suburbs like Metra take Metra and Pace into the city and then use CTA to get around while they're here. In fact, at least 72,000 suburbanites are registered users of our electronic Chicago cards. And it's not just Cook County either. There are 15,000 registered users from the collar counties, and of course that doesn't count the tens of thousands who actually pay cash. Clearly, transit is critical to the economy of this region. With good transit, cities work. Businesses grow here and choose to relocate here, and because of a good transportation network. Employees can get to their jobs. Residents can get to stores, theaters, or concerts. The CTA is a transit hub for this region. So how do we deliver those 1.7 million rides every day? It's a very large organization. We have about 10,500 employees and a $1.3 billion annual operating budget. Our 8 rail lines are served by 1,190 rail cars that operate over 224 miles of track. To help you picture this, our track covers roughly the driving distance between Chicago and Detroit. CTA trains travel more than 200,000 miles a day, equal to making 150 round trips from Chicago to New York City. If you think that's impressive, I'll give you some statistics on a bus. We have 153 bus routes that cover more than 2,500 miles. The fleet is made up of more than 2,000 buses, and they make more than 25,000 trips a day. On an average day, CTA buses travel more than 220,000 miles, which is roughly equivalent to traveling around the world almost 9 times. It's 9 times a day, every weekday. So it takes a lot to support all that service. In fact, it costs more than $3.5 million a day to keep the CTA running, and it doesn't include the capital investment needed to maintain all of its facilities. Most people don't realize that our fares don't come close to covering our expenses. Transit needs to be subsidized to keep it affordable for as many people as possible and to ensure that coverage is as extensive as possible. The CTA has assets valued at close to $7 billion. That includes the buses and trains and miles of track that I just mentioned. It also includes 525 facilities, which I think a lot of individuals aren't aware of. It includes 144 rail stations, 8 bus garages, 61 substations, and maintenance facilities, just to name a few. Some of these facilities are brand new, such as the stations along the Brown Line, which has been under renovation, or the new rail terminal at Howard's in Rogers Park. Alderman Moore is here, right? There he is. It's really a snazzy station. It's really nice. Come and visit it, that's right. Yeah. But the CTA is one of the oldest transit systems in the U.S., and we have some infrastructure in place today that's more than 100 years old. We have several loop elevated stations that are more than 110 years old, and although some would say they don't look a day over 100. Where's Noel? Is Noel here? That was Noel's joke. That was a good one, Noel. They laughed. The Dempster and Main stations in Evanston were built in 1908. And then there are the youngsters, the stations along the Blue Line that were built in the 1950s. Not everything old is alone on the train system. We also have a couple of bus garages that were built in the early 1900s. These stations and the CTA are an important part of Chicago's history, but they aren't museum pieces. They are a vital part of the region's transit network, and the older they get, the more it costs to maintain them and keep them in working order. I'd like to continue discussing all that's involved in maintaining our system in a state of good repair, but first I'll share a little more about the history of the CTA itself. When you board at one of our 100-year-old stations and ride in one of our CTA's 40-year-old rail cars, you probably don't appreciate that the CTA has a history of innovation. But the fact is that the CTA has often been an industry leader and continues to find ways to innovate. Chicago has a rich history of public transportation, dating back 150 years when horse-drawn cars were the cutting-edge transit choice. Private companies built much of the network that makes up the framework of today's system, including projects that were major engineering challenges in their time, such as the creation of the elevated train system. Elevated rail service began in 1892 when the fare was merely a nickel. The private companies went bankrupt, and the CTA was created in 1947 as a public agency to purchase their assets and assume operation of the system. Under the banner of the CTA, Chicago's transit system continued to evolve, and a number of modern elements were introduced. The downtown subways opened in 1943 and 1951. The CTA has a large fleet of hybrid buses today, but even back in the 1950s, the CTA was experimenting with alternative fuels. It operated the largest alternative fuel bus fleet in the nation using clean propane gas instead of diesel. Although it's common today to see trains operating in the medians of expressways, the CTA, I love this picture. The CTA literally broke new ground combining transit and expressways. The first median rail line was created in conjunction with the construction of what is now the Eisenhower Expressway in 1958. Leading the groundbreaking was a person you're all familiar with, Mayor Richard J. Daley. The concept was extended to the Dan Ryan branch of the Red Line in 1969 and along the Kennedy to what is now the Blue Line in 1970. Adapting to suburbanization, the Skokie Swift opened in 1964 as the fastest, nonstop rapid transit line in the world, traveling 46 miles per hour at a 5-mile route. Chicago is the only American city with 2 major airports connected by transit. O'Hare's Blue Line opened in 1984, and the Orange Line to Midway opened in 1993. And as a former aviation commissioner, I'm proud to say that O'Hare is one of the nation's most successful airport rail stations, as measured by the percentage of all airport visitors who use transit. Major investments in rail over the last 10 years have contributed to ridership gains. The Blue Line Cermak branch was reconstructed and transformed into the Pink Line, and ridership has increased by 50%. The capacity expansion project on the Brown Line is nearly complete, and last year enabled the CTA to lengthen trains from 6 cars to 8 cars so that more riders can be accommodated. And innovations continue today. The CTA's bus division is putting technology to use to improve service and provide better information to customers. The CTA Bus Tracker is a leading-edge technological tool that tells any rider with a web-enabled mobile device when the next bus is coming. So for those of you here with web-enabled phones, please make sure that you're visiting ctabustracker.com when you leave here and take public transportation back to your offices. You're giggling, I'm serious. Or if you prefer, register on our site and we'll send you an email every day with bus arrival information. And this summer, we'll also be providing the information via text messaging as well. Currently, the CTA has 150 hybrid articulated buses, and another order for 58 will begin delivery in the next week or so. These articulated hybrid buses replace older bus models. Older buses are costlier to maintain and break down more often. As these new hybrid buses continue to arrive and are phased into service, not only are we improving fuel efficiency and adding capacity to our fleet, we're also able to provide more reliable service to our customers. Hybrid buses significantly reduce emissions compared with standard diesel buses and help CTA not only continue to meet but exceed the emission standards. There have also been notable advancements in fare collection. The CTA's electronic smart cards, the Chicago Card and Chicago Card Plus, have revolutionized the fare collection system. Gone are the days of CTA personnel collecting mountains of cash every day. 10 years ago, at least 50% of CTA's fares were paid in cash. Just 10 years ago. Now cash makes up less than 5% of our fare payments. In 1998, the CTA set up the University Pass program for colleges to buy CTA passes for their full-time students as part of their college fees. 45 colleges and universities now participate. With 109,000 students, the program is one of the largest in the country. Ridership is trending up, and the UPass is credited as being an important contributor to the continual ridership gains that the CTA has experienced over the last 11 years. So far this year, our overall ridership is higher than last year, but whether it can continue to withstand the economic conditions remains to be seen. High gas prices and free rides may have helped us last year. Now, at more than 10%, unemployment is at a 25-year high in Illinois, and we're starting to see a slight impact in our weekday bus ridership, which has tended to be most sensitive to economic trends. Rail ridership is still gaining over last year, and weekends are performing well too. Nevertheless, my predecessors did a great job in turning around the years of declining ridership with the right investments. We can continue to make progress, but as well as we plan for the future, we face tremendous challenges. Identifying the funding necessary to maintain aging infrastructure, continuing to offer reliable daily service, and expanding the system to meet future demand. CTA is a good system, but as we've discussed, it's an old system, and it requires continued investment to keep it running. So, of course, my first few weeks on the job took Chairman Brown and I both to Springfield and Washington, D.C. to help secure critical capital funding. The Federal Surface Transportation Bill is up for reauthorization, and the CTA will be in Washington again in the coming months, making sure our needs are addressed. Like every other transit agency in the country, we count on federal capital funds to help maintain our system. However, the CTA's share of federal funding has declined over the past 2 decades. A recent report by the Federal Transit Administration found that the backlog to bring the 7 oldest transit agencies, of which the CTA is one, to a state of good repair, just a state of good repair, is $50 billion. Our own capital backlog is close to $7 billion. And this does not include expanding our system, simply bringing it up to a minimum standard. That means that due to a decreasing share of federal rail modernization funding over the past 2 decades, in order to keep systems running safely, agencies such as the CTA have had to make patchwork repairs to aging infrastructure and equipment rather than renew track and buy new rail cars. This is due to the outdated national transit law that disproportionately rewards newer systems that run slow, small, 2 or 3 car trains that make half the number of trips and carry less than a third of the riders per train than heavy rail trains in dense urban areas such as New York, Boston, San Francisco, and Chicago. The FTA has recommended that the funding formula be changed to recognize that rail transit investments needs are higher for systems that serve as the backbone of a region's transportation system and carry more riders on transit lines that run frequent rapid transit service with 6 to 8 car trains. The FTA also recommended that a special temporary federal program be established to help whittle away at the $50 billion state of good repair backlog. The good news is that prominent policymakers recognize the shortcomings of our current system. Senator Durbin, who spoke on this issue just last week from this podium, led an effort with 11 other senators, including then Senator Obama, to ask the FTA for a study of the needs of the largest rail systems in the country, and it resulted in this FTA report that I'm speaking of now. We at the CTA are already working with our counterparts at Metra, with other similar transit agencies across the country, and with Senator Durbin and the rest of the Illinois delegation to implement the FTA's recommendations in the next federal surface transportation bill. It's vitally important that federal transit law be updated to fairly allocate funds to transit systems that provide the biggest bang for the public buck. I'm happy to report that last week, the bipartisan leadership of the U.S. House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, led by Chairman Jim Oberstar, issued a blueprint for the 6-year Highways and Transit Bill, and that includes important changes that would benefit CTA. It aims to simplify what's called the Fixed Guideway Modernization Program so that funds are allocated based on age, type of rail system, and maintenance needs. The realignment of this program will likely lead to an increase in funds for true fixed guideway agencies such as the CTA, which means a faster, more efficient, and safer ride for our 640,000 daily rail riders. We applaud Chairman Oberstar, Chairman Peter DeFazio, and Ranking Republicans John Mica and John Duncan for their leadership in putting forward sensible, policy-driven reform for this program. Although we're anxious for the reauthorization of the Surface Transportation Bill, there's been some positive news in terms of federal funds. The CTA, as many of you know, was an appreciative recipient of the federal stimulus bill. It provided $241 million of much-needed capital funding, which we're putting to good use at our Blue Line Dearborn subway and by purchasing additional articulated hybrid buses for our agency's ever-aging fleet. The CTA has submitted an application for statewide capital funds as well. As everyone knows, there's not been a major capital program out of Springfield in years. We very much appreciate having been informed that we will be receiving a one-time $496 million mini capital amount and anxiously anticipate a full capital bill that would potentially provide us an additional $900 million over the course of the next 5 years. Again, this amount will assist in plugging our close to $7 billion unfunded need. With the right capital investments, the CTA can become the first-class transportation system that it has the potential to be. The right capital investments can also free up operating dollars for new and innovative programs. In addition to providing service that's on time, clean, safe, and friendly, some of my top priorities are to improve CTA customer service so that friendly is a reality and not just a slogan. I also want to achieve and maintain a high standard of cleanliness for all the agency stations and vehicles. But it takes investment to make many of these things happen, so securing appropriate funding is always at the top of any priority list. So what's in it for me, you may ask? In a nutshell, traffic congestion is expensive and a major threat to the region's economic growth. Transit is the antidote to gridlock. A few years ago, Metropolis 2020 did an extensive study of the economic benefits of transit investment. Their report, Time is Money, summed it up very well. If we don't adequately maintain transit services, it will cost the region's businesses and households over $2 billion annually. And I'll quote from their report. Investing in transit allows our entire transportation system, including streets and highways, to be more efficient. We become more mobile. We travel faster. Businesses want to locate and grow here. We create jobs. We save time and expand our economy, and that means more money for all of us. With good transit, riders save money as well. According to the June Transit Savings Report issued by the American Public Transportation Association, a 2-person household in Chicago can save an average of over $11,000 a year if they take the CTA. Basically, with good transit, cities work. That said, I recognize that people are tired of hearing how the CTA and every other government agency needs money. And I know it will take more than statistics and reports to convince people that an investment in the CTA is an investment in their own best interests as well. In these tough economic times, people are expecting more than ever that government be efficient and accountable. Through the leadership of Mayor Daley and Chairman Brown and the efforts of my predecessors, one that they can take pride in. That's why one of my priorities is to bring a stronger customer focus to everything the CTA does. We want customers to talk to us. But just as importantly, we need to listen to what they have to say. Although we have many methods for customers to communicate with us, whether it's through public meetings or customer service phone lines or emails, those outlets tend to lend themselves more to general comments or complaints. I've found that because I'm the new guy, people who have suggestions and ideas are also reaching out to me directly. What I would like to do is provide a forum where they can do this much more easily and where I can get a snapshot of what's on their minds. So next week, the CTA will be launching